What up, guys? It's your boy Quake, and Jay-Z has finally addressed all the questions that we had on his latest 444 album, and he did it exclusively on Tidal. And I didn't think he was going to do this just because Jay-Z isn't much of a person to do interviews, but he did it mainly, I think, because it's a Tidal exclusive. He wants more people to subscribe to Tidal, but nonetheless, regardless of why he did it, the fact is he did it and he explained a lot. So of course, when the album came out, we all had speculations of what he was talking about. Some things were more clear than others. You know, the shots at Kanye, the slight shots at Future, you know, addressing him cheating on Beyonce, his relationship with his father, mother, all that stuff were a little bit clear, but then we had our own speculations. You know, was this line going at Kanye? Was this line going at Beyonce? Was this talking about this incident? So we didn't have real clarification, but now we hear it straight from Jay-Z's mouth. So now it's 100% clear, about as clear as Jay-Z can make it, at least as much as Jay-Z wants to make it. So I'll definitely go over everything. I'll even try to play the audio clips from the interview if copyright doesn't get me. If copyright gets me, then you will not hear audio clips in this video. But if it doesn't, then I will definitely play the audio clips of each incident that I'm addressing. And I will definitely break down each part, so just in case if the audio doesn't make it, you guys can still listen to me reading quotes from the interview and me explaining, certain parts that Jay-Z's talking about. So let's get into the beginning part of the interview. Right off the bat, he talks about who inspired him to get back into the studio, make music. What kind of music did he study? He talks about studying not just rap, but other genres. Talks about listening to Prince, and just listening to a bunch of other artists to get inspiration and to study from them. So it's great that Jay-Z still studies from other artists. He doesn't think he's the best, and he still thinks he has stuff to learn. He said that 444 first started by No ID, who No ID is the guy who produced the whole album. No ID called him in October of 2016 and basically called him quick and said, "Hey, I have your next blueprint for your next album." And Jay-Z was kind of blown off. He was like blown away by it. He was just like, are you sure? Because, that's a big statement. So No ID called him, but nothing really happened. Then they touched base again. And on January 3rd, they finally started recording the album. And he said that he didn't want to just release music for the sake of releasing music. He wanted to release an album that really had a message, that really stood for something, and that would impact, the culture moving forward. And basically he said it started out with these first two tracks, Kill Jay-Z and The Story of OJ. Once those tracks were made, he knew which direction he wanted this album to go. Jay also said that he's never made such a personal album in his life before. He said he had personal tracks on other albums, but it would be like one or two tracks on the album and then a few sprinkles of personal stuff on other tracks. But he said he never released a full album with just personal tracks about his life. And he said that he was going through a lot, so he definitely wanted to vent about it. And Jay said that he wanted a simple album rollout, something that was direct, that people got the message. And he didn't want like crazy music videos for the songs. He just wanted, mini documentaries and things that really, spoke about the track of whatever video it was. He also mentioned that there are leftover tracks from this album that didn't make the album. He said there's a part 2 to Kill Jay-Z that was supposed to come in before the BAM track. And he also mentioned a track called Black Gold. Now, will we ever hear these tracks? Probably not. Some artists don't release everything that they record in a studio session. So he just said it didn't fit the album well. He didn't feel like, he should put those tracks on the album. And he wanted the album to be condensed. He only wanted 10 tracks because there's so much, he's saying in the album. There's so much content that he didn't want, it to be overwhelming to people. So they wouldn't have to consume so much. To fast forward a little bit more, he talks about how well the album did in terms of sales, and addresses people saying that he cheated, meaning, he got the 1 million buys from Sprint and that it doesn't count as actual album sales. He says that, it was accounted for that 1 million people illegally downloaded the album. And he said that 1 million, sales were made where he could give away 1 million copies of the album through Tidal. Not physical copies, but digital, so people can listen to it for free. 1 million people can. So he says that's still 2 million. It might not be in sales, but 2 million people have that album for consumption. So he said it's not cheating, it's just facts, And I can see what he's saying in that. But that's the way he addressed it. And then he said also, even if you don't want to count that 2 million in whatever free consumption, he said the album, when it came out physically, it did another 200,000 and it landed #1. So he was like, what else can you say about that? It's still a #1 album. It still did what, it was supposed to do. So he was like, who cares about what people are saying about it? He said he could care less. So he addressed that incident, and he said that Tidal is not boosting their, streams. He addressed that as well. He said that, Spotify counts a lot of the free streams. So people who don't pay for Spotify, the people who just use Spotify for free, they count those streams as well. So he says, Tidal does the same thing, so they're not boosting, and that all the streaming services do the same thing. Now let's get into the thing that really pissed off a lot of artists, that had a lot of people talking, and that was the money to the ear line. And of course, you guys know on the story of OJ, he raps, "Y'all on the gram holding money to your ear. There's a disconnect. We don't call that money over here." So a lot of people took it as Jay-Z was dissing people who are holding money to their ear and posting on Instagram and saying that, hey, we're richer than that, so that money is chump change. And of course, a lot of people got offended by that in terms of artists. Boozy said, I don't give a fuck what Jay-Z says. I'm still going to do that. Drake even took some subtle shots at him. Future took some subtle shots at him through Snapchat. And I have the videos, if you want to see the videos for those responses, I'll link them in the description below. But yeah, Jay-Z basically said this, word for word. I'm not against young guys versus old guys. I didn't even tell people to stop using the money phone. I didn't say that. It doesn't say that anywhere. How is this being misinterpreted? I just said that this ain't money to us. It ain't. That's just an honest statement. And he continues to say the reason why he said that is because he's not trying to ruin the fun for the young generation of rappers. He said himself that he was ignorant and he would do a lot of dumb shit. He's just saying that he wants to give advice to the younger generation and tell them, hey, I did this. I messed up. I want you guys to go farther. I don't want you guys to mess up. I want you guys to take the baton and run with it. He said he's not the fun police trying to ruin things. He just said simply, hey, I'm giving you advice. Take it. Do what you want with it. Don't take it as offensive. Just try to do good better than I did. He also said stunting on Instagram is just going to cause tax problems. And, you shouldn't work hard just so you can go on social media and stunt with it. He said that shouldn't be the end all to everything. You should focus on the future, invest in businesses, build your brand, don't just go to strip clubs and then, stop right there. That'd be the end all just so you can stunt, and throw money in a strip club. That shouldn't be your main, end goal, because you won't last in this industry. So fast forwarding past that, he finally addresses the sort of line/disses at Kanye West on the Kill Jay-Z track. And here's what he says word for word. Think about how I got to that point. It's not even about Kanye. It really isn't. His name is there because it is truthful on what happened. I'm saying the whole point is you got hurt because this guy was talking about you on the stage. But what really hurt me was you can't bring my kids and my wife into it. Like, Kanye is my little brother. He talked about me 100 times. He made a song called Big Brother. We've gotten past bigger issues, but you brought my family into it. Now that's a problem with me. That's a real problem. He knows it is a problem because me and him would have been resolved our issues, but he knows that he crossed the line. I know him. He knows. He also explained further after that. He said the lines where he's talking about, these are the lines where he spit on the Kill Jay-Z. He said, you walking around like you invincible. You dropped out of school. You lost your principles. I know people backstab you. I felt bad too, but this fuck everybody attitude ain't natural. But you ain't a saint. This ain't kumbaya. He said those lines are about him, not Kanye West, but Jay-Z himself. He said he's sort of reflecting on his own life, saying that he's done a lot of stupid things. And then he's like, I got hurt because he did cool by Ye, meaning I did everything right for Kanye. And this is where he's talking about Kanye, the whole kumbaya and lines and above that. He's not really talking about Kanye. He said he's just reflecting on himself. And he just said he got hurt because, Kanye brought his family into the situation. He said his kids are already brought into a celebrity light when they're born. He said, do not bring them, further into something where the public, can talk about them as well. He said, they haven't talked for 8 months since, that happened, and they still haven't talked about it and reconciled yet. And he's like, if Kanye records a song and responds, he's like, that's fine. That's perfectly normal. He should do that. So he won't get offended by that, and he said he'll take it from there. Once that song, if Kanye is recording a new album and he does respond on a track, he said he'll listen to it and then he'll take it from there depending on how Kanye responds. He also went on to say that the whole Kill Jay-Z track is just him and his self-conscious talking about, the bad things that he's done in his life, and he's just reflecting on his life for the most part. And then he gets asked about the $20 million incident where Jay-Z lent him $20 million and Kanye still hasn't paid him back. And Jay-Z admits that he shouldn't have mentioned that on the Kill Jay-Z track. He said it was too personal and that it should have been something that him and Kanye should discuss in private and not on a track, where the public can hear it. But he also said that this album was very personal, so he was like, there's no limits, there shouldn't be any boundaries, He was like, I let it all out, and it is what it is. And of course, he said he got frustrated, like I said, about Kanye bringing, their children into this. He said, don't bring children into this, that shouldn't be, that should be left alone. But then, Brian, the interviewer, says, hey, you brought Future's child into one of your raps, so isn't that sort of crossing the boundary? And he was like, oh yeah, I did, so really there should be no boundaries in terms of music. So that segues me into the Future incident. Now, for those that don't know, on the Kill Jay-Z track as well, he said in one line, in the future, other guys playing football with your son. So it's clear, I broke it down in the other video, it's clear that he was sort of, talking about Future and his incident with Sierra, and how when Future and Sierra broke up, she ended up marrying a football player, Russell Wilson. And then there's a picture of Future's son hanging out with Russell Wilson on the football field with Sierra. So he used that line, to sort of, reflect on himself and how he didn't want that situation, to be him. So he goes down and breaks down, explains what that line is about. And here's what he says word for word. I thought about that line. I thought about hip hop. I was like, I really don't mean any malice. What I mean by that is the way that his situation plays out, because he's such a public figure. Mine would have played out that way and maybe even 4 times more. Like, his child is in a loving environment from what I see. I don't know. I'm not discrediting Step Pops and the whole world. It was a line that says that could happen to me in the future. It just so happens that his name was Future, and I just made a scheme out of it. And we all thought, obviously, that this was a diss towards Future. I mean, Future could have probably taken it that way. That's why we thought that. I mean, it was just a clever play on words. A lot of people figured that out themselves. But, I mean, Jay-Z clarifying it definitely made things better. He said he didn't mean any malice by it, obviously. He also went on to say that that was really his fear, something that, he could potentially see happening to him. If him and Beyonce end up breaking up for whatever reason, it would be a hard pill to swallow to see his kids with another, father. So he just reflected on himself and said that, that's all it is. It's not anything towards Future. And he said that he would rather, have to come to terms with, him not being with his kid than him, having his kids in a toxic relationship with his wife, Beyonce. He wouldn't want his kids to be in a toxic relationship. If they're constantly fighting, he wouldn't want his kids around that. So he said, this is just me reflecting and saying that if anything goes wrong, I would just have to accept it and we would have to split so the kids wouldn't be in a toxic place. Hove then reverted right back to Kanye West, saying that he was not holding him to Tidal because there was rumors that Kanye West wanted to escape Tidal because he didn't get paid the money that he wanted. So he said that he's not holding Kanye at all. He's an artist. He's always let artists do whatever they want. He used examples of J. Cole. He can always, do whatever album he wants, whatever music he wants, whatever he wants with his career. Same with Vic Mensa. So he was like, I'm not holding Kanye West back. And then he goes back to, we haven't had a conversation. And he's like, eventually we're going to sit down, and talk this through and patch up the relationship. And now he finally addresses the elevator incident with Solange and Beyonce. He talks about Solange first. The interviewer asks what happened, what led up to that night. And Jay-Z doesn't really answer that question. He sort of, sways away from it. So I guess he's not trying to really directly say. A lot of people speculate and say it's because that night he was caught cheating on Beyonce and that Solange, saw him or whatever the incident was. and that, she ended up kicking him in the elevator and stuff. So Jay-Z didn't really address what happened that night, because I think he still doesn't even address cheating on Beyonce in the whole interview, but he definitely, sort of addresses it and then sort of sways away from it. He basically says, it was just a disagreement, and that's his sister, meaning like, it's not his sister-in-law, it's his actual, he treats her like his actual sister, Solange. So it's just a disagreement, and that's the only time they've ever had a disagreement with each other. So the interviewer then goes on to ask, what was going on in your mind, trying to further, get him to answer this question. He asked him, what is going on in your mind when that incident happened? And he just said, it was like a shit fucked up moment. Like he felt like shit. And then when the footage came out, he felt even more like shit, and that he wanted to correct the situation, and he wanted to make sure his relationships with not only his wife, but, the family members of his wife were all good, and that, they ended up working through things. He didn't say anything about cheating or, anything specific, but he was like, we were working through a lot of issues. So I'm assuming that's because Jay-Z cheated. I mean, he even said it on the album a few times in a few lines that, they could have possibly split up, and usually that's because of cheating. I highly doubt it's because of other things. I mean, they're rich, it can be financial issues, they're both rich on their own. So he just doesn't answer the question directly. He also goes on to say that he doesn't care what the public thinks, if they're assuming things, between Beyonce and Jay-Z. He said, he's working on his personal life, and he doesn't give a shit about the fame because it's going to come and go, and that, his personal life is more important. So he worked on fixing that before anything else. Jay-Z then also goes on to say more interesting things. He said he heard Beyonce's Lemonade album before it came out, and he said he wasn't mad at it at all. He said it was a tough thing to go through when the album came out because, a lot of rumors came out, a lot of assumptions came out. He said that was the only tough thing, but he was like, he agrees with everything with what Beyonce did on the album, what she talked about. He said it was therapeutic, and that she felt like it was therapeutic. So he was happy that, they both talked about it on each of their albums, and they weren't hiding anything. So and then he said that they worked on the relationship again, and that, they became closer because of, them just speaking freely on songs about how they felt. So it's clear when Jay-Z says that they had to work on some internal things, some things that they messed up on. It's clear that it's about the cheating incident. He just doesn't openly say, hey, I cheated and we discussed about it. So those are all the major points in this interview. And this interview is only part one, so there's going to be a part two of this interview that's going to come out. So I'm definitely going to break that one down as well. But those are all the major points from, how the album was created, what inspired him, the bunch of lines from the album he explains. So I just went over all the major points with the extra filler being cut out, and hopefully I explained it thoroughly for you guys. And like I said earlier in the video, if there is no audio clips from the interview in this video, it's because copyright didn't let me use them. So that's not my fault. I can't control that. So hopefully I explained it as well as possible, and that you guys, got a great take from this, because I like to use audio clips and content from the original, video and post. But, YouTube has its copyright laws, so sometimes I can't do it, and that's not my fault. I can't control that. So like I said, hopefully you guys got a great experience from this. I explained it thoroughly. But with that being said, leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think Jay-Z explained, most of these lines as well as he could? Do you guys think he dodge those questions about cheating on Beyonce? I feel like he did a little bit. He didn't really directly answer it, which is fine. I mean, that is his personal life. It's the fact that he just did this interview, which is great. It definitely clarified a lot of things. So leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Like, share, and definitely subscribe. I do videos like this every day on hip-hop news, who changed the music industry, hip-hop beefs, and much, much more. So definitely subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.